Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I have a slightly different setup today than I did in my last videos because I'm back home and I'm recording. So today I'm going to be doing my makeup and answering some questions that people commonly ask me. Depends on how long it takes for me to do my makeup. Let's see. Oh my gosh, the dogs are barking again. I don't miss this life. I swear I don't. Don't miss the dogs barking every time I sit down to do a freaking video. When they were fine all day and they were quiet. So I'm going to apologize in advance if you guys hear dogs barking in the background. If it gets too bad, then I'm going to turn the camera off and yell at them to shut up. So yeah, I'm going to start off with a primer. I forgot to plug in my mic. Okay, so, yeah. Two questions I'm going to try and answer in this video is, one, how I learned how to sew, and the other one, I should have answered this question like a long time ago, back when it was relevant, but you know, better late than never, which is why I stopped submitting to alternative magazines. Like, I used to exclusively do photo shoots with photographers, and I would agree to do TFP, time for print, time for photo shoots with people under the guise of I can use these pictures to submit to magazines. And, you know, for a minute that worked, but I had a lot of difficulties. So let me get to that first question first. I'm going to use this underneath my concealer. Yeah. So, how I learned how to sew. In high school, I went to 3 different high schools, and the last school that I graduated from, they had a fashion construction class, they had marketing classes, they had pre-law classes, they had CNA classes, they had cosmetology classes, so that by the time you graduated high school, like if you took their CNA classes in high school in addition to your regular credits, then by the time you graduated high school, you would graduate with a CNA. You can take cosmetology classes and become a cosmetologist when you graduate. You could, like you can take auto, you could take classes to help you become a mechanic. You know, like it was a school that really helped start you off in life pretty good. And I really like that because, it was nice, you know, like all the other schools I went to, they never really taught anything that I felt was useful towards the real world, and it made me not really care much about school because I felt like I was wasting my time. And I knew I wanted to get into fashion design. I knew that I wanted to be a full-time artist, and my plans for adulthood were to work a regular job, possibly in the fashion industry. And while I was working in those industries, learn as much as I possibly can, save, invest, and then focus on my art. And then once my art got to a point where I could actually make a living from it, I would quit my day job and just focus on my art. And you know, that plan didn't quite work out as well as I thought it would. So yeah, I took fashion construction in high school, it was just basically a sewing class. And the pros and cons of it were that, one, I was able to learn how to sew, and I've been wanting to learn how to sew for years. Ever since I was a kid, I've been wanting to learn how to sew. I've been asking people to teach me how to sew. I've been asking, you know, family members to like put me in classes to sew, but nobody ever did. People didn't really take that ambition too seriously. You know, it was just kind of one of those things that was dismissed or, you know, like whatever. So I finally went to a school that taught sewing classes, and I was very fortunate for that. That's not the same for every high school in my area. Trust me, I've been to many. I've been to many different grade schools and 3 different high schools, 3 different structures. One was all girls school, one was a boarding school in Wisconsin, and you know, the other was a public school out in the suburbs. That's where I ended up graduating from. Ooh, this concealer is a lot thicker than I thought it would be, but we're gonna work with it. So once I saw that this school had those classes, and you know, I automatically took advantage of it. And yeah, I took advantage of this class. And initially I was gonna go to this school to help me graduate early because of the way that the credits work at the all-girls school and how it translated towards the boarding school was like some of the classes I took in 8th grade actually counted for high school credits, and some of the classes I took my freshman year of high school actually counted for credits that I would need for my sophomore and junior year because they were so behind educationally. And the system that the all-girls school used was more advanced. Like, it was more college prep. Like, basically training you so that, like, when you start in 7th grade, you're already taking classes at a high school level. And by the time you graduate, like, if you went to that school from 7th to 12th grade, like, your 12th grade year would be, like, prereqs for college. So when you actually go to college, you'll be more prepared for it. So I initially went to this school to take classes for summer school so that I could graduate early. Because my birthday is late, and if I would have graduated school with my class, then I wouldn't have graduated high school until I was like 19 years old. So the plan was to go to summer school at my local high school that I lived at the time and take some classes, and then by the time I returned to this boarding school in the fall, then like I would have enough credits to graduate with the class before to graduate with the class ahead of me, if that makes sense. And then if needed, I can go back to summer school at that local school and then graduate, if that makes any sense. But the boarding school that I was going to, how it was set up was like the year that I went, the boys' dorm was torn down and they were building it. So by the end of the year, the plan was to, the next coming year, what they told us at the beginning of the year, was the next coming year they were going to separate a portion of the boys' dorm that they were building, and then have it so that the girls can stay on one side and the boys can stay on the other side, but we wouldn't have any contact with each other, because that's how the girls' dorm was. The girls' dorm was split in half, and the boys stayed in there while their dorm was being built. And then by the end of the year, when they finally finished building the boys' dorm, it was only enough rooms for the boys that were currently there, and everybody had to share. There was no room for the girls. And how they were going to try and do things were, they told us, like, yeah, we're just going to section off a part of the gym, and the girls are going to sleep in the gym. We're going to set up bunk beds over there, and then when it's time for PE, we're just going to, like, have, like, a curtain. And then we're going to raise the tuition. You're still going to have to pay room and board. We're going to raise the tuition, and that money is going to go towards building the girls' dorm. And it's going to be smaller than the last dorm. And they were still asking for donations from alumni and stuff. Also, their education system is very behind. Pretty much everybody that graduated from this school, once they went to college, they had to take remedial classes because they weren't learning-ish. My school days there were only 4 hours. Like 3.5. I'm not even exaggerating. Like, I went to school from like 8 to 12 or 8 to 11:30. And then I worked in the factory after school from like 1 to 4 or 12 to 4. One of those times. So I wasn't even going to school full time like other people were if you go to like a regular daytime school. So, yeah. Once I saw that the school that I was going to summer school for, with plans to return to that boarding school, like, I was like, oh, look, they have fashion construction. Maybe I can take that. And then it was like, oh, you can't take that during the summer. That's not available. And the reason why I ended up going to my local high school instead of the boarding school for summers, because they didn't have a summer school program. If you needed to go to summer school for any reason, you had to go to a daytime school in your area. And the boarding school that I went to was in Wisconsin, and I live in Illinois. So, like, that just wasn't going to work out. And I told my sister, like, about the whole situation with the dorms and how they're going to raise the tuition and all this other stuff, and how, like, this high school that was in my area was actually better, and she ended up sending me there. So I took the fashion construction class, which is basically a sewing class. And at first I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm finally going to learn how to sew. And I can make some creations and stuff. And it was great because I learned like the basics of sewing. But you had to buy your own fabric for all the projects. You had to buy your own thread. If you wanted to do extra practice, you had to buy a sewing machine to use at home, which I had no problem with. My sister gave me the money I needed for those things and all that. Problems that I had with this sewing class were, we only learned how to read like fashion sewing patterns. We didn't learn how to construct our own pattern pieces, and we weren't allowed to modify the patterns that you gave us. So a lot of clothes that I made for this fashion class, I wasn't even able to wear. And it's like, I had to make my sister drive me to Joann and spend like $80 to $100 or whatever on fabric on top of everything else for these projects. And I can't even wear this stuff because she won't let me alter the pattern the way that I need to alter it in order for it to fit for me. Like one time we had this hoodie project, and it came with this fabric kit, and it was like this ugly basic jersey fleece crap. The colors were so faded and gross. And then the hood part only came up to here, like the middle of my ear. It wouldn't come like over my face. And I wanted to have like a really big hoodie, like, or just a regular size hood in general, but she wouldn't let me alter the pattern in order for the hood to fit. So when I sewed everything up and I put the hood on, it was like here. I was just like, this is pointless. And like, if I would have altered the hood to fit the way that I wanted to, then it would have affected my grade. And I wasn't able to wear that hood. I ended up having to give it away. And it's like, what was the point of me working on this? I'm supposed to be learning, and I'm not actually learning how to modify anything to fit my needs. There was this one project we had that we had to make pajama pants. And, you know, that was a cool project. Nice beginner project, you know, whatever. But she had us do this thing. It's very weird, actually. Where she had us sit down and measure from the top of our waist, where we have our pants when we sit down, to the chair. And she said that was because the patterns are old-fashioned and everybody wears their pants up to their belly button, and the pattern pieces were unisex, which means they were made for men, and which would be lower than women's crotches. And then once we sew it, the crotch is going to be all the way down to our knees. I'm like, I have long legs. I highly doubt that. And it's not like I don't own unisex pajama pants as it is. So I don't think it was that big of a deal. So I did that. And as I suspected, it was going to be too short to actually fit me because of the way that she told us to alter it. Which was just downright annoying. Like, So I wasn't able to wear those pajama pants comfortably, and it's like I would have much rather just left it alone or whatever. So we didn't learn how to draft patterns from scratch, and we couldn't alter the store-bought patterns, and I hate store-bought patterns to this day. Okay, so I'm back. Dogs are quiet again, hopefully. Yeah, so I had these pajama pants that were like camel toeing me if I wore it up to my waist or the place that I wanted to wear my pants. So yeah, like I had like a bunch of clothes that I made for that class I wasn't able to actually use because of the way that she taught us how to do things. And she didn't really teach us how to use the serger until the end of the year, but she just kind of gave us a crash course on it. It was like, oh, you guys are learning this next year. And it's like, so she had us doing the piece. So everything we sewed, we would finish the seams with zigzag stitches, which does not work for all types of fabric. And I had a Singer machine at the time, and Singer machines, in my experience, I've owned like 3 of them. Singers, like, they bunch up a lot. They cause lots of issues and damage, and just overall get on my freaking nerves. Oh my gosh, 0 out of 5 stars. Do not recommend it. The Singer machine. Maybe some of the newer ones are better quality, but the ones from like 10 years ago are just trash, and I much rather prefer the Brothers machine. Kenmore machines are pretty decent. Did you know me machines are pretty decent, but a freaking Singer machine, oh my gosh, trash. 2020 was a sewing machine. It would be Singer's brand. Anyway, so that just wasn't working out for me. And I expressed my concerns and struggles, and she was just like, well, this is the way I teach, and this is the way you have to learn. Having don't do things as I say, then you will fail this class. So I just had to so I ended up having my sister spend money on things that I couldn't really use. And then I ended up having to use, I don't know, like, I ended up making things that I couldn't even freaking wear. And then I ended up having things in my closet that made for the sewing class, and I couldn't even freaking wear it. Like, I was just, like, it was bittersweet. It was great to learn how to sew, but I wasn't even learning the things that I needed to know in order to make the projects that I wanted to make at home. So as for everything else that I've learned since that class, I've learned through YouTube, I've learned through books, I've learned through trial and error. I've joined different sewing communities throughout the years, and I've asked certain questions, and people have been very helpful. If you go to like a fabric store, not Joann, but like Vogue or I don't know, like a Mood fabric or whatever, people there sew and are like experts in sewing. They've been doing this for years. And if you have questions about a machine, you have questions about sewing techniques, you have questions about sewing with different fabrics and tension and all that stuff, they will answer those questions for you. Like, we learned about tension and like how to tell if a fabric is too tight, and then you will loosen the tension, or if it's too loose, then you tighten the tension, you know, like that. But we didn't learn about like what tensions work with what fabrics. We didn't learn much about different needles to use for different things. Like, I knew there were universal needles for the sewing machine, and then there were leather and jean needles. I didn't really learn much about ballpoint needles, which are essential for like stretchy fabrics. I know they make needles that are stretch needles for a sewing machine, but it's much better to use a ballpoint. It's much better to use a ballpoint needle because if you're working with different types of fabric and the give is different depending on how the stretch works, the ballpoint is going to be more universal, and the stretch needles can be very thin and break easily, depending on what you're doing and how you're doing it. that's just me and what I have personally learned from my experiences. So yeah, everything else I've learned just from that. I didn't learn much about fashion illustration. I know I used to get in trouble for drawing like an anime or more like a realistic style human being versus a croquis, because croquis annoyed the effing crap out of me, because they would be like, that's too fat for fashion. You need to make the legs twice as long as the torso. And I didn't like that, because when I actually made clothing and tried it on, if I used the croquis sketches as a guide, then it didn't translate well, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I know the fashion industry lives by this. Also, when I was applying to fashion schools and I went to like different like workshops and stuff at the art schools that had fashion design programs, they were just teaching you how to design things and how to create patterns and how to do CAD. And they were just like the way that the fashion schools worked, from my experience from just going to workshops and stuff before I applied, was they were just teaching you how to be a good employee for the huge fashion brands, and those jobs are few and far in between. There wasn't a whole lot of statistics regarding like what the demand is for fashion designers. There wasn't like, YouTube was a thing back then, but there wasn't people talking about their experiences working in the fashion industry and what they thought things were versus how it actually is. So I didn't really have a whole lot of realistic perspective in terms of how my life would be like as a fashion designer. And like, I never wanted to work as a fashion designer in terms of like wanting that to be my full-time job, because I don't want to work for some fashion house. I don't want to, I don't know, like I don't want people telling me what to create and how to create and stuff. Like, the whole purpose of me wanting to get into fashion design was so that I can learn how to create and do my own thing and sell directly what I like to the public. Like, I wanted to do my own designs and stuff. And they were like, I say they as in, you know, my teachers, people at workshops, like, they're like, no, you don't want to do that. You just want to start like that at first, and then you want to learn how to do CAD and send patterns off overseas, and then they'll manufacture stuff for you, and then you want to get people that you want to get, like fashion merchandisers, attention at fashion shows, and have your designs changed for the demand of the stores. And you want to work with like, you want to pay attention to fashion, what is it called, like fashion predictors, fashion forecasters. They're basically like weather forecasters, kind of, or just like psychics. They're not like psychics, but they're like, they look at the data and they pay attention to current world events, and they predict what will be the next fashion trends, and send that out to fashion designers, fashion houses, and then people will try and make things similar to that. And once you do, you're basically competing with other fashion houses to do the same thing, and that's kind of how everybody comes out with the same stuff. But yeah, like, I learned how to sew because I wanted to be a fashion designer, and I still do, but I've learned more about the industry within recent years, and I just know that is not going to look at all the way that I thought it would. I just want to have my own shop and sell my designs and hand make everything, and at some point get my own assistant, because sewing is very exhausting, and you can't just make things and like put them on the website or whatever. You have to like plan photo shoots, you have to have models, you have to have photographers, you have to I don't know, there's a lot of things going on into it. But, you know, basically that's kind of like how I got into sewing. Like, I learned in high school, like, the very basics of sewing. But all the things I learned that are the most helpful for me right now are things that I've learned on my own. Like, I could ask a question, Google it, and boom. And I would trial and error, and there's different communities for it. And then we have platforms like Skillshare and Udemy and all that other stuff built by people. So I feel like you don't, like, if you just want to work for yourself, if you just want to be like a handmade fashion designer, and make everything yourself, then you don't necessarily need a fashion degree. Like, you don't necessarily need the exclusive information that is at a fashion institution in order to learn the best out of the best. Because there's lots of people who have those degrees and have those experiences before that was a degree in college, who are teaching that information online very affordably or even for free, on YouTube even. So if you're interested in learning how to sew, especially during times of COVID, I recommend doing that. There's a lot of things I felt like I would learn better in person, but I have no way of knowing what the overall class structure would be like, because I'm like, I don't want to take a sewing class and they teach me how to make a t-shirt. Like, I don't want to sew a boring ass fucking t-shirt. If I wanted a t-shirt, I would go to a dollar store and buy a t-shirt for $1 or something like that. Like it's so cheap and easy to get t-shirts. Like, I don't want to take a sewing class and they just like, how to sew a t-shirt. Like, I don't freaking want to. Now, if they taught you how to sew a button down, because that's like a lot more complicated, then, you know, that makes sense. But if all your, or like how to make a vest, like, that's interesting, because there's many different types of vests out there, and there's different types of patterns, there's different types of styles. Like, there's so much you can do with that. But I don't want to pay hundreds of dollars for a sewing class and they're just like, how to make a t-shirt, or something basic like that. So oftentimes, if I want to learn something new, I end up Googling it and finding a YouTube video for it. So yeah. What is that other question that I said I was going to try and do in this video, in addition to how I learned how to sew? Oh yeah, why I stopped applying to alternative magazines. So, if you guys don't know what an alternative magazine is, it's basically a magazine that features the works of alternative models, alternative musicians, photographers, fashion designers, jewelry designers, accessory designers. Just talk about the works of different people in the alternative industry. They feature books relating to horror, Gothic art, you know. Just talk about the newest creations within the scene and all the artwork that people are creating. And part of their segments were they would feature alternative fashion designers, they would feature alternative models, and you would have very artsy shoots that, you know, would garner lots of support and attention on social media. But, you know, a magazine was considered to be more valid And there were a few around at the time. The most popular one was Gothic Beauty, but, you know, I stopped supporting them years ago. They used to be my favorite magazine, but, like, I stopped supporting them years ago because, there wasn't a lot of representation of anybody outside of a thin, skinny, white 20-something girl. And then there was that one time where they had a cover of a man, and it was like the only time they did it. It wasn't like changing anything or whatever. So I just found it kind of annoying over the years because they weren't being very inclusive, and they weren't accurately representing people in the scene. And I know that black people exist in the scene besides myself and my few group of friends. I know that I know for a fact that there are other people around the world. I know that people who are interested in alternative culture, you know, come from all walks of life. You know, indigenous, Hispanic, Latino, like, whatever, like, you didn't necessarily, it wasn't just all just 20-something goth people. It was people of all ages, people from around the world and everything. But, like, I stopped submitting because of, one, the print industry is a dying art. Two, I dealt with a lot of creeps within that space. Like, I remember I asked a question about submitting to a magazine, and I noticed that either their name or maybe the people that they were featuring were like petite women. And I asked, like, do you guys only feature like short models, or is it petite as in like small frame? Is it short and skinny? Like, what does that even mean? Because I feel like petite is a very broad term. Like, some people use the term petite in women's fashion or whatever to describe height, like something that's specifically for short girls, or something that is specifically for like short and skinny. Like, I don't know, like, it's like, what do you mean by petite? Like, is there a height requirement? Do you have to be short to submit? Like, you have to prove your height? Like, I just didn't understand what was going on. So I asked this person, you know, what the deal was with that word and what it means to them. And they're like, oh, I don't know. Can you send me a picture of yourself topless? And I was like, what? Okay, bye. There were a lot of places that I submitted work to, and it was great work, and I worked so hard to get into it, and I already got approved. But then once I did the shoot and submitted everything, they would not use my pictures. But if the photographer that I worked with did a similar shoot with a white model and submitted that work, then they would feature that. And, you know, at first I was thinking, well, you know, I didn't make the cut, you know, it's whatever. But then I just noticed a trend, like, that's real suspicious, and I don't know, over time I just got over it. Also, a lot of times I would do these photo shoots with photographers for TF, meaning time for pictures, time for trades, time for prints. And the trade was, I will do this shoot free of charge, provided I can use these pictures for submitting to an alternative magazine. And, you know, most people would be like, cool, you know, like, we can do that. That sounds fun. That sounds great. You know, we can do this, this, and that. And we would brainstorm different ideas. And, like, it was a pretty fun thing. But a lot of times I ended up doing these little trades with people. And they would either not sign the photographer's release paper, or they would not send high-res images. Like, the requirements for most magazines when you submit to them were they would ask for high-res images. They would ask for at least 3 to 4 pictures. A lot of times they would ask for at least 2 to 3 different looks and between 7 to 12 different pictures, just so that they have a little bit of variety. So I would have to do these shoots, and when I did these shoots, they were like, I would bring like 3 or 4 different outfits. We would shoot in different locations on different days. Sometimes we would shoot with different backgrounds. We go to like abandoned buildings and shoot in different rooms. We would go out into nature and have like different backgrounds with nature involved and stuff. And like, that was a pretty fun thing to do. And like, the photographers would either not give me my pictures back at all. They would post the pictures before the magazine published them. And when you submit to magazines, you can't do that until after the magazine is published, because they want the content in their magazine to be exclusive to them. So if they posted those pictures on social media, the magazine saw it, then they weren't going to be able to use them, and it just made the whole photo shoot moot. There were times where I would shoot with people, they would not sign the photography release, even though that's what, like, what, you have one job. There was one time I paid for a photo shoot, and I told this person the requirements and magazine and everything. And then when I submitted the picture that she sent me, and they were low res, and then she ended up posting all of the pictures from the shoot onto her Facebook page and tagging me. And I had to ask her to delete them because I wouldn't be able to use them. And then when the magazine came around to wanting to use those pictures, she was not able to provide high-res images. She had like a little .2 camera. She didn't have a DSLR, and she wasn't able to take the pictures that she had and expand it to a high-res image. And I paid her for that shoot, so I was just like, you knew damn well you had a point-and-shoot camera before I even reached out to you. You knew damn well you wouldn't be able to provide high-res images before I told you, before agreeing to the project. Why did you have me go out of my way to meet with you in the suburb and do this whole fucking photo shoot? And now I can't even use these to submit to the magazine that I wanted to submit to. And every month there's a different theme. So it wasn't like I was able to use those same images to submit to a different magazine, because everybody has their own themes and stuff. And it was just like so freaking annoying. I had photographers completely ghost me afterwards. I had photographers completely, they just wasn't following the rules. They either didn't provide high-res images. Once the magazine did accept them, they didn't sign the photography release the magazine sent them. They didn't respond to me in a timely manner, and by the time they did, the magazine was already published and out. Some photographers ended up deleting all of the images from the photo shoot afterwards, either by accident or just because they didn't like it without letting me know what was going on. And I had to reach out to them to see what was happening, and they were like, oh, I deleted pictures from that shoot. And they never sent any pictures from those shoots. There were photographers who, they did not edit my pictures. They would just send me raw images. They were too big for me to fully open all the way. And I did, they look horrible because... Hi guys, so I went ahead and did my eyeliner and my eyebrows off camera. They're a little bit uneven, so I decided to go with the stitch thing look. I forgot to say happy second day of Halloween. I'm recording this on the second day of October. I don't think I'm going to be able to record any more videos today except for some art videos, so I hope you guys enjoyed this Get Ready With Me /Q&A style content, let me know below. And I will see you guys later. Bye.